You guys ready to rock and roll? Yeah. Say yes. 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 All right, guys. Looks like we got some people taking a break. That's okay. Quiet, please.
Hey, if everyone likes this conference so far, let's give Avery a round of applause. This is twice as good as I was expecting. So.
Oh, okay.
Good job.
Awesome. Is it my sloppy documentation on social media? All right. So I have no questions planned, but I'm super interested in what you do. Big shout out to Garrett last year, who's not currently here. Hopefully he'll watch the replay. But Garrett attended this event last year, and then he mentioned you, and Garrett's an interesting guy. He does wholesale, and he prepped books for me for a while. And anyway, I started listening to your podcast, and as I said, I listened to one episode where you were like, I love events, and that's why I wanted to have you on. And I had no idea that you were doing you're doing $50 million a year plus. Jake said even more than that some years.
Yeah, in 2018 was actually our biggest year. We did 65. But we actually have shrunk since then just to focus on profitability. It's easy to chase numbers. You can make a lot of revenue on very, very little to no profits. And so we shrunk and just to grow our gross margin.
Yeah, and you seem to have your numbers down to a T. I don't know if you knew Caleb, the book flipper, before this, but you remind me a lot of him.
We spoke.
But you sell things other than books. But both of you are super analytical when it comes to numbers. You literally have it down to you said you took it from 12 to 16%. Your profit margins by simply.
No, it was about 14%. And to be honest, when we were at 14%, I was like, there's nothing more we can do. Yep. I thought that was the highest gross margin based off of what we were buying. And then just flipped a switch and then went to about 19 to 20% gross margin. Obviously, during COVID, that kind of went up to 30% for a little while, but that didn't sustain.
And when you say you cast your net wide, not narrow, what does that mean? Because I asked, what's the main difference between you and somebody like Amazon Lit, and you said you cast your net wide, and they go a little bit more narrow.
Yeah, we peaked. We had about over 100,000 products active in FBA, and really, it was just a function of our program where we would, throw in a bunch of UPCs, tens of thousands of UPCs, find out the profitable opportunities, and it just ended up being that we could really find the products that were less competitive, but because they are less competitive, there's fewer sales on them, and so we would buy, when I'm saying 100,000, we probably were only buying about 15 units on most of those and selling, 15 units a month. We're happy with it because that's kind of, we just scaled wide. Whereas other sellers, I'm jealous of their problems where they only have 200 SKUs, but they do crazy numbers on those.
What does your actual sales process look like? So you talk a lot about the numbers and all that's great, but if you take a step back and how you even get access to these lists, what are you doing to actually get to get the list in the first? What's your sales process look like? Do you have a sales team calling distributors, manufacturers, or?
We built so many relationships in 2012, 13, and 14, and 15 that we really haven't needed to get more relationships. We have probably 600 suppliers that we work with, and
so you don't have a system for getting more. You're just. What you have, it's just let's get updated lists and
we just get updated lists, and there's so many products. We're still drowning in opportunities, And
are you technically a top 100 Amazon seller?
Our peak, we were this is just based off of seller feedback. I think we were 6 or 7 for a little while. Not a lot of, there was.
No, wait, number 6?
Yeah.
Wow. Holy shit. We got a top 10 Amazon seller in the house.
But our average revenue was a little bit less. For example, I know Caspian, our average price point is around $14. Caspian is another very large wholesale reseller. Their average price is around $30, $35, and so they only need to sell half as many as us.
Okay. And do you know off the top? I know watching me Amazon one time, he mentioned booksellers that were big. Do you know the top booksellers like Better World Books, Discover?
So when I asked about thrift books, my cousin started it. So he sold it about 10 years
shit.
ago.
Did you hear that, Caleb? His cousin started thrift books.
Yeah. Yeah. That's how we got connected.
Yeah. Does that shit just run in the blood then? Like, I guess thrift books is huge. Like,
Yeah.
they're top 5, right?
Yeah. The thing is they run like 10 accounts. It's not just the thrift books. They're pretty systematized. I do believe I heard from the guy that sold thrift books 10 years ago. I had Sunday dinner with him 2 weeks ago. Thrift books is planning on exiting again. So, okay. Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know what they do. Scott Needham numbers for sure. How did you get started? I'm sure you get bored of being asked this question over and over again, but actually, I was thinking about it. I don't know. How did you, a lot of people have a sob story, you used to live in your car or some shit, and then you start, selling on Amazon. But are you a college graduate? Were you always an entrepreneur?
Yeah, I actually really like hearing about a lot of people in this room had normal jobs before. We got a banker and we got all this. I studied computer engineering, got 2 degrees. I was working for a government contractor when my brother told me he was selling on Amazon, and he's like, I'm just having a real hard time. Actually the problem that you described about reordering products, that you were talking about reordering products, that was his exact problem. And I was just well, you just need software. And there was nothing back then. This was 2011, 2012. And if I knew that Amazon would have been as big as it is, I would have started selling software 10 years ago. But really we were just building just for ourselves. And so I saw an opportunity to partner up with a brother. And it was a lot of fun. We were doing 4 million, then 8, then 20, 30, 40. We had some triple digit gains for a few years. Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
So how much capital, if you don't mind sharing, did you need starting out?
Depends what you want to do.
I mean, you specifically, did you, because...
For wholesale or?
Yeah, for your Amazon business. Amazon.
Our wholesale business right now has about $4 to $5 million of inventory. Mm-hmm. So to do those numbers, you obviously need, a fair amount of investment. My brother was very, creative and generous, and we started out of a retail store, which does have plenty of advantages. It was I actually worked there when I was 16 years old. I worked at my family store, and then he's actually took a loan out on the building to put into inventory. So that gave us access to a capital a little bit easier. There's now a lot more creative options to get more capital. But before, obviously, everyone's got a different risk profile. I do think you really want to know your numbers cold before you consider, really leveraging yourself. You want to figure out skills that if you get suspended, you can get back up. That happened to me in 2017. We were suspended. I was on a trip in Alaska, July 4th, and I'm not gonna lie, probably the worst 48 hours of my life.
Yep.
Hands down, because we just didn't know what to do. It was trauma. And the thing is now, if I get suspended, I know what's going to happen. We're gonna call up one of those suspension consultants, and we're gonna make sure we're their top priority for a little while. And I've had multiple awkward scenarios with Amazon or legal situations, but I know the people to talk to, and we know how to get out of it.
Actually, I heard that Amazon reaches out to you for questions about Amazon. Right? They've done that before, right?
The thing is Amazon's a huge beast.
Okay.
Every single employee there they're on their own team, they're doing their own thing, and
I've heard they listen to your podcast. That's what I heard.
yeah, there's a few that do. I know that.
That's crazy.
I think when I complained, I started complaining last summer about the quantity limits, and one of them reached out, being like, "Hey, I heard this. Is there anything we could do?" And I don't have a lot of confidence in any specific employee actually doing anything. Mm-hmm. You're a cog in their machine, so you just kind of got to figure out how to fit in that machine.
Yep. When it comes to advice that you give people, I'm an ant compared to you. I did 1.4 million last year, and I'm always hammering people with the advice of get better at finding sources, get better at selling, get better at sales skills, because if you're able to sell people and build relationships, and that's what's going to pay off in business, and I believe that to my core. But somebody like you who does 50 million a year plus, seems like and you're not focused at all on getting more suppliers. So what would you think is the best piece of advice for someone who's doing 5-6 figures a month and they want to take that to the next level? What is it? Is it sales? Is it knowing your numbers? Is it spending more money? Is it getting the right source? What is it?
Really just staying hungry. So when I jumped into wholesale for about 1 year, I would every piece of software I was making for us just changed our business. And then after that, it was really diminishing returns. There wasn't a lot more to improve here. Or I would work a month on something and maybe not it would work out. I do think when you're starting out, you can make huge changes to your business. And so after about a year, I kind of started getting lazy. I was I'm not making a big difference. And honestly, that made work less interesting. I stopped bragging about how I had the coolest job in the world. So, but I know I flipped that switch 2 or 3 times, and since then have found a way for me to keep improving myself and learning about things. And really, the biggest unlock there was just doing a podcast. I think everyone they said about social media was really interesting, and I do think a lot sometimes the podcast is just for me. It's I want to talk to someone really smart, and I can lure them into a conversation just by saying hey, jump on my podcast. I got a few thousand listeners, and they're the right people for you to share. And so I personally think there's a few more people here that should be thinking of something that they can partner up with others in the industry, whether it's a podcast or a YouTube series, and do it just for your own knowledge, and you'll find it will open interesting windows. And at the beginning with the podcast, I was really just sharing a lot about my business, but more and more I've turned it into an offensive tool to meet the right people in the industry and make some connections that really work. And in the process, I make sure we don't touch the same subject twice. I'm okay, that's interesting, that's new. I was talking with, I'm gonna get his sales.support, Steven. I've talked to a few prep center people, but this is one he was willing to talk about his prices. I'm okay, we can jump into prep centers and talk about, how much you charge and why you charge and all of that. All of a sudden it's interesting because it's a slightly different angle. So, yeah.
Did you find a prep center, by the way? I saw you posted about a prep center, 1,000 people messaged you. You posted about a prep center the other day, and 1,000 people.
Yeah, that was...
You found out that every single Amazon seller has a prep center to an extent.
Sometimes people use me as a conduit to get to a lot of other sellers, and I mean, it works. I really on Instagram, I can ask a question and get a lot of really quality answers very fast. Literally on Tuesday, a big seller called me up and he's hey, our sales are down 30%. And he thought, he actually pegged it, the day that his sales started going down was actually during the Ukraine war. The day that it started, his sales went down. And so then that's why I created a poll that day to hey, if you're private label, are your sales up or down? Are you for your wholesale, are your sales up or down year over year? And it actually, I think most people it was slightly up year over year. And then it's like, okay, there is not some crazy like trend of everything going down.
Yeah. The one thing I didn't like about that though is like you don't know if people are just getting started. I feel like people just getting started are like always getting better.
Obviously.
You know? So like if you could like qualify it with like you've been in business for like 5 years plus.
Well, so I followed it up with, and I was like, okay, well, you know, in Smart Scout, we're tracking seller feedback scores of every single seller. So we did like an analysis year over year, and like I don't see any trend downwards.
Okay,
so I was
gotcha.
like, okay,
Gotcha.
all right.
Sweet. I was gonna ask you, okay, you're doing 50 million a year. How many years have you done like over 10 million?
Only the first year we weren't doing that.
Okay, so like a decade now.
So about 8 years. Yeah.
Is there anything like super irresponsible you do with your money? Like what do you splurge on? Like you're wearing like clothes are pretty modest
Hey,
right
this
now.
is Lululemon.
You got
Come
a
on.
Ferrari in the back or something? Like what is your thing that you just spend
Honestly,
an outrageous
all of
amount?
my net worth is like tied in the business.
Okay.
Like I do all right, like, but my wife makes more money than me.
Yeah.
She does pretty good though.
Can you show us your tax returns?
The tax returns is another issue because, you know, if you buy more inventory, you're taxed on that. So.
Yeah. Yeah. Can you do the thing where you like at the end of every year you just max out your credit cards and buy a bunch of inventory and just not pay taxes for 5 years? That's what Caleb told me to do. To not pay taxes.
No.
You said what? I don't pay taxes. Yeah, that too.
Or you move to Puerto Rico.
Puerto Rico 2023. Coming soon. That's really all I have. Do any of you guys have burning questions for Scott? We got a guy right here.
On your podcast, I know you're talking about going international, going through international marketplaces for Amazon. What have you been doing for that?
It really depends what you want to do and how you want to do it. Let's see. International, you have to, there's the lowest hanging fruit is NARF, North American Remote Fulfillment. You should consider turning that on right now. It means your products here in the US, if they're at FBA, are immediately selling in Mexico and Canada, and that actually has become more significant to our business. I think we're doing about 10% of our business just by the flip of a switch. And so the NARF, the North American Remote Fulfillment, that's the easiest thing. If you want to go to Europe, you have to get like the VAT compliance thing. Usually Amazon, like every other year or whatever, they have some program where they'll get you all your VAT stuff for free. They'll kind of cover the cost there by connecting with you. It really sucks. It's going to take 3 to 6 months, and you're going to be filling out a lot of forms. But once you get there, then it gets a little bit easier. But I still use service providers. Like I don't want to deal with like shipping and compliance and all that. It's pretty easy if you got 1 or 2 products that you think are an edge. But if you're going to go really big, like it's honestly not. It's not the first thing I would do. I know some people have a lot of success. I talk to lots of people that do it all the time, and I still have very moderate success on my end.
Got a question back here. You mind coming up here?
So my question is, when is it an appropriate time, and what's the most professional way to ask a supplier for a discount?
So the best way to make the discount conversation is make it very easy for them. We started creating POs where you could probably do this in Excel or whatever, but we're like, okay, here's our PO at your price. Here's our PO if you give us 5% off. Here's our PO if you give us 10% off. And, it gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And so, you throw the ball in their court. It's very, they know what they're getting. And some suppliers will be responsive to it, and some, not at all. It's just not even, they can't do it.
Got it. Thank you.
Other questions?
Yes. You mentioned that your profit margin has been better lately. So what will be your top 5 characteristics that you choose in a product so you can keep selling it besides profit?
So what other reasons do we choose a product? Or
Yes, because you said that right now you're selling less volume but more profit.
so
Thank you.
I mean, like, we are always tracking more than just the profit. We're like, Amazon's in stock rate. If it goes above like 30%, we just won't buy it anymore. And we are always looking at the current conditions of the product. And so if like, even if we were profitable, if it's gone down, we will stop buying on it. So you got to make sure you're always getting a snapshot of the latest data. There's a lot of other variables. Like, we've tracked like 50 variables, but at the end of the day, our own sales dictate what we do in the future. So yeah.
I have one more question for Taylor. And then also we have Vanessa and Alexis coming up next. I forget which order, but you guys are coming soon. She is a expert for Amazon health support and plans of action, getting your accounts back up. And Alexis is just fucking amazing. So get ready for those two. My question for Taylor is like, I give him advice, but again, like me doing 1.4 million and then look at you doing 50 million, I'm sure you can give different type of advice than I give. I'm always telling people to get their numbers down. And so he does automation programs for people, and he also has an Amazon business of his own, and he tracks the ROI. And what he noticed was that his automation clients had a slightly lower ROI than his own personal products, which is obvious. You know, he's going to source better products for himself. He was actually sourcing the products himself. And then he was having the VAs source the products for the automation, which still turned a profit. So this is all online arbitrage. What do you recommend that he focuses on? What key performance indicators, like what metrics, what number, you know, if he's having his VAs function essentially like a software, what should they be focusing on? You know, sales rank, should they be looking at keeper graphs, looking for steadiness? Like what like 5 things or however many could they like really niche down on to make sure that the ROI is a little bit higher? Does that question make sense?
No, it makes perfect sense. It's kind of an extension of an earlier question. We've tried bringing in all sorts of numbers, and there's really only a few that matter. So like we've brought in like average number of FBA sellers, or like number of sellers within the buy box, or even the buy box volatility. Like, is this change a lot? The thing is like the past doesn't always predict the future, because people are seeing the same things, and like everyone could like reinvest. Here's a great example: seasonal products. We could have crushed it one season, but we're not the only people that noticed it. We always find the next season everyone else jumps in on. So, but you know, it's sales rank, margin, Amazon, and stock rate. Those are it.
I'm not looking at the Amazon in stock rate at all, so that's something maybe we should track.
Yeah. Something else I was thinking is because he casts his net wide. I wonder if you should be a little bit more patient and take some slower selling items with a higher ROI, since it's not his money and these people are patient. Like they're looking at it more as like Taylor's like a alternative to index funds. You know, do you think he should focus on slower selling items, because you sell slower selling items?
It's got pros and cons. There's less competition, but you have a slightly higher chance of just getting stuck with it. So I wouldn't necessarily recommend going to like the slowest. Find your thresholds. Find your sales rank thresholds that you're comfortable with, and you'll find those in the middle will still do all right.
Awesome. I think that's about it, guys. Give it up for Scott Needham.